My name is Eleanor Brooks, and I'm 69 years old. I live alone in a quiet coastal town called Seabrook, North Carolina. I've been a widow for nearly 15 years, ever since my husband, Richard, passed away from a sudden heart attack. We built a beautiful beach house together, our dream home after decades of hard work. I spent most of my life as a school librarian, a job I loved because it kept me surrounded by stories and young minds. My two children, Nathan, 37, and Clara, 35, were my world. I raised them with all the love I had, sometimes skipping meals just to pay for their school trips or college fees. Nathan moved to Atlanta years ago to work in real estate, and Clara stayed closer, visiting often with her husband, Brian. Life was peaceful. My days were filled with reading, gardening, and early morning walks by the beach. I thought I had done everything right, raised good kids, saved a little, kept my home full of warmth. Every Sunday, Clara called me. Sometimes she'd say, "Mum, you should sell that big house. It's too much for you." And I'd laugh softly, "Honey, this house is my memory. Your dad built this with his hands." I never knew those same words would come back to haunt me. One breezy morning, while I was tending to my roses, I noticed Clara's car pulling up. She wasn't alone. Brian and Nathan were with her. I smiled, thinking it was a surprise family visit. I had just baked my favorite lemon pie. But the air felt strange when they stepped out. Serious faces, no smiles, no hugs. Clara avoided eye contact, and Nathan didn't even remove his sunglasses. We sat in the living room, the same room filled with framed pictures of birthdays and Christmases. That's when Clara finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "Mum, we have something important to tell you." I looked from her to Nathan, waiting. My heart began to race. Brian cleared his throat. Then Clara said the words that shattered my world. "Your beach house and your car, they're sold. We're leaving tomorrow." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands went cold. I thought I had misheard. "What do you mean, sold?" I asked quietly. Nathan leaned forward, his tone cold. "We handled everything for you, Mum. It was the right thing. You're too old to live alone. You'll move to a senior facility near Atlanta. We've already signed the papers." My world collapsed. Everything I loved, my memories, my independence, gone. The same children I had sacrificed my life for had sold my home behind my back. I sat there frozen as their words echoed in my mind. Sold? Facility? My voice shook as I whispered, "You had no right. This is my house." Clara sighed, avoiding my eyes. "Mum, please don't make this harder. We thought about what's best for you." Brian added, "You'll have people to look after you. You'll be comfortable." But comfort was the last thing I felt. The house around me suddenly felt foreign. The sea breeze that once brought peace now carried the sting of betrayal. I looked at my daughter, my sweet little girl, who used to cling to my apron, the one I stayed awake for when she had nightmares. How could she do this? Tears blurred my vision as I said, "I didn't raise you to steal from me." Nathan snapped back, "It's not stealing, Mum. You weren't managing things well. You don't even drive anymore." His words cut deep, each syllable colder than the last. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was whisper, "Get out." They didn't leave right away. Clara tried to hold my hand, but I pulled away. My voice broke as I said, "You took my home? What's next? My name?" That night, I sat by the window, staring at the moonlight hitting the waves. My heart ached, not from old age, but from betrayal. I thought about Richard. If he were alive, none of this would have happened. I spoke softly into the darkness. "You'd be so disappointed, Richard. Our kids sold our dream." The next morning, movers arrived. Strangers were in my living room, wrapping up furniture, taking down photos, boxing up my life. Clara tried to help, but every time she touched something, I wanted to scream. Nathan was on the phone managing paperwork. I overheard him talking about money, numbers I didn't recognize. It hit me then. They didn't just sell my home for safety, they sold it for profit. I found my wedding album in one of the boxes. My trembling hands opened it. Richard's smile stared back at me. I remembered his promise. No matter what happens, this home will always be yours. And now it was gone. I pressed the photo to my chest and cried silently. When the truck finally left, the house was empty. Clara hugged me before leaving. "Mum, please understand it's for your own good." I didn't respond. Her tears meant nothing when my trust was already dead. They moved me to a small senior apartment near Atlanta. It was clean, quiet, but it felt like a cage. I missed the ocean, the sound of waves, the smell of salt. Every night I sat by the window, wondering how everything I built could vanish in a day. Some of the other seniors were kind, but I couldn't connect. My heart was still on that beach. Then one day, I received a letter from the county office. It mentioned irregularities in the property transfer. That was the moment something inside me woke up. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to fight back. With trembling hands, I called an old friend, Martha, who used to be a paralegal. She came over with documents and a fire in her eyes. "Eleanor, they forged your signature." My world shifted again. But this time, not from pain, from anger. Together we contacted an attorney. Weeks passed, evidence piled up. It turned out Nathan had arranged everything, using Clara's trust to push it through. I filed a case. When they were served legal papers, Clara called me crying, "Mum, please don't do this." I said quietly, "You already did." I didn't want revenge, I wanted justice, and for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. The day of the hearing came faster than I expected. I wore my old blue dress, the one Richard always said made me look brave. My hands shook as I held the folder filled with evidence. My forged signature, the bank statements, and the property sale records. Clara and Nathan stood across the room, avoiding my eyes. Nathan looked confident, maybe even smug, while Clara's face was pale. As I took my seat, I could hear my heartbeat louder than the judge's gavel. My attorney spoke calmly, showing the documents that proved the sale had been processed without my legal consent. When they displayed my forged signature on the screen, a gasp went through the courtroom. I felt the tears rise but held them back. I wasn't weak anymore. I was a mother fighting for what was hers. Nathan's lawyer tried to argue that I had given verbal permission, but the evidence said otherwise. My attorney turned to me and said, "Mrs. Brooks, please tell the court what happened." I stood, my voice trembling but steady. I trusted my children. I believed they were doing what was best for me. But trust should never be used as a weapon. The courtroom was silent. I glanced at Clara. Tears streamed down her face. Nathan kept his head down. The judge's eyes softened slightly before he spoke. "We'll reconvene with a decision in 2 weeks." When I walked out, reporters outside tried to question me, but I said nothing. I just looked up at the sky and whispered, "Richard, I hope you're proud. I'm still fighting." For the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. I felt alive. Broken, yes, but still standing. A few days later, I got an unexpected visitor, Clara. She stood at the door of my small apartment, clutching a grocery bag and crying. "Mum, can I come in?" she asked softly. I hesitated, but nodded. She sat down quietly, looking around the small living room, then said, "It doesn't feel like home, does it?" I didn't answer. She continued, "I didn't know Nathan forged your signature. I thought you agreed to sell. He told me you'd signed everything." My heart twisted. I wanted to believe her, but the pain still burned too deep. "And you didn't think to ask me?" I whispered. She shook her head, crying harder. I'm so sorry, Mum. I was scared. I thought you'd be safer with us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her bag and handed me an old photo, me, her, and Nathan at the beach, years ago. I just wanted us to be close again, she said through tears. I sighed, my voice softer now. Clara, closeness doesn't come from control. It comes from love. She broke down, her head in her hands, whispering, I'll fix this, Mum. I promise. For the first time in a long while, I saw a spark of the daughter I once knew. A week later, the news broke that Nathan was under investigation for multiple fraudulent real estate deals. Apparently, I wasn't his first victim, just his easiest one. I watched the report on TV, my chest tight with both anger and heartbreak. How did the boy I raised with so much love become someone who saw people as transactions? Clara called me later, sobbing. Mum, it's all over the news. He's ruined everything. I closed my eyes and said quietly, No, Clara. He ruined himself. When the police arrived to question me further, I gave them everything I knew. My heart broke again as they took my son away in handcuffs, his face hard, emotionless. He didn't even look at me. I wanted to run to him, hold him, tell him I still loved him. But I couldn't. Not after what he'd done. Some wounds are too deep to touch. That night, I sat by the window and watched the rain pour down. The thunder outside felt like the storm inside me. Loud, relentless, and full of sorrow, I whispered, I forgive you, Nathan, but I can't forget. Forgiveness was the only way I could survive. 2 weeks later, the court ruled in my favor. The judge declared the sale null and void, restoring ownership of the beach house and my car to me. The courtroom burst into quiet applause. I sat there stunned, unable to move. My attorney smiled gently and said, You did it, Mrs. Brooks. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a legal victory. It was emotional closure. I had taken back not just my home, but my voice. Clara came to hug me after the ruling. Mum, I'll help you fix everything, she said softly. I smiled faintly. We'll fix it together. For the first time in a long while, there was peace in her eyes. Nathan, however, didn't show up. His silence spoke louder than any apology could. When I returned to Seabrook, I stood in front of my beach house again. The wind carried the familiar scent of salt and sand. I touched the wooden railing Richard built and whispered, We're home again. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and crimson. For the first time in months, I felt safe. Life slowly found its rhythm again. I spent my mornings walking along the shore, feeling the sand under my feet, watching the waves erase old footprints. Like time healing old wounds, Clara visited often, helping me repaint the porch and replant the flowers that had dried up. We didn't talk much about the past, but there was understanding in every quiet moment we shared. One afternoon, she said, Mum, do you ever wish things had happened differently? I smiled sadly. Maybe, but sometimes pain is the only teacher that gets through. Nathan wrote me a letter from prison months later. It was short. Mum, I'm sorry. I lost my way. I hope one day you can forgive me. I read it over and over. Before tucking it into my diary, I whispered to the sea, I already have. Standing there with the waves kissing my feet, I realized that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant freeing myself from the weight of bitterness, my home, my peace, and my strength, all restored. The story of betrayal had turned into a story of redemption, and as the sun set on the ocean, I finally felt whole again. Months turned into years. I didn't hear from Nathan again after that letter, though I sometimes saw his name mentioned in local papers when his sentencing came up. He was sentenced to 2 years for fraud and forgery. It hurt to see my own son's name listed under real estate scam. But somewhere deep inside, I believed this was his chance to start over. Clara, meanwhile, slowly rebuilt her own life. Her marriage with Brian didn't survive the chaos. They separated quietly, and she moved closer to me, renting a small apartment a few blocks away. We grew closer in silence, in shared pain, and in the quiet understanding that some things are too broken to talk about, but can still heal through love. Every Sunday, she came over to help me cook. We'd sit on the porch with steaming cups of coffee, watching the sea. Sometimes she'd reach for my hand, and I'd squeeze it, a simple gesture that said more than words could. One evening, she asked, "Do you ever miss Dad?" I smiled faintly. "Every day. But when I see how far we've come, I know he'd be proud. Not because we're perfect, but because we didn't give up on each other." She leaned on my shoulder, tears glistening in her eyes. Even in my late 60s, I realized that healing doesn't come from winning or losing. It comes from learning how to live again after your heart breaks. My beach house, once a symbol of betrayal, became my place of peace again. The laughter of the waves replaced the silence of pain. Yet sometimes, at night, I'd still glance at the old photo of Nathan and whisper, "Come home someday, son. I'll be waiting." It was a cloudy afternoon when I heard the knock. Clara was away at work, and I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I froze. It was Nathan. His hair was shorter, his face thinner, and there was something humble in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a boy. "Hi, Mum," he said softly, his voice trembling. For a moment I couldn't speak. Every emotion, anger, grief, love, collided in my chest. "You came back," I whispered. He nodded. "I didn't know if you'd even open the door." We sat in the kitchen, the same spot where he'd eaten breakfast before school, years ago. He stared at the floor before saying, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see you. I lost everything, Mum. The money, the business, the trust. I've been working at a construction site since I got out. I'm trying to make things right." I watched him, searching for a trace of the man who betrayed me, but all I saw was a broken son trying to rebuild himself. I poured him coffee, my hands trembling slightly. "You can't undo what you did," I said quietly, "but you can start again, if you mean it." He looked up, his eyes wet. "I do, Mom. I want to come home sometimes. Not for the house. For you." My heart softened. I reached across the table and touched his hand. "Then let's start small," I said. "One visit at a time." For the first time in years, we both smiled. Nathan began visiting every Sunday. At first, he didn't say much. He helped Clara fix things around the house, repaired the fence, cleaned the gutters, and painted the porch. It was quiet work, but it meant something. He'd often say, "I don't deserve this house, Mom." And I'd reply gently, "Maybe not the house, but you still deserve a chance." Slowly, the walls between us began to crumble. One evening, we had dinner together, just the three of us. Clara was cautious, but kind. There were long pauses between conversations, but at least there were no accusations. Halfway through, Nathan looked up and said, "I used to think success was about money, but now I realize it's about peace. And I've never seen peace look like this. Like home." Clara smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time we stop running from each other." That night, as I washed the dishes, I felt Richard's presence somehow, as if he was watching us from wherever he was, proud that his family had found their way back together. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real. And sometimes, real is enough. A few months later, I sat by my window overlooking the sea, a pen in my hand and an old notebook open. I began writing a letter to Richard, something I hadn't done in years. "Dear Richard," I wrote, "I thought I'd lost everything when you died, and then I thought I lost everything again when our children betrayed me. But life has a way of rebuilding what we think is gone forever. Clara's found her way back to me. Nathan, too, is learning what love really means. The house is still standing, and so am I. As I wrote, tears filled my eyes, not of pain, but of peace. You always said this house would be our legacy, I continued. You were right, not because of the walls or the ocean view, but because it became the place where forgiveness was born. I folded the letter and tucked it into Richard's old fishing box by the window, the same box he'd used every summer. Then I whispered, "We're okay now. You can rest easy." Outside, the evening sun melted into the horizon, the waves whispering like old friends. I realized then that love never truly dies. It just changes shape, sometimes into forgiveness, sometimes into quiet strength. Years passed. The beach house aged with me, but it remained filled with warmth. Clara remarried a kind man named Tom, and they visited every weekend with their two little boys, whose laughter filled every corner of the house. Nathan started his own small carpentry business. Simple, honest work. Every few weeks, he brought me handmade pieces, like a birdhouse or a photo frame. "This one's for you, Mom," he'd say proudly. And I'd smile, remembering how far we'd all come. On my 70th birthday, the whole family gathered at the beach house. The smell of roasted chicken filled the air, and the sound of the waves danced through the open windows. As we sat together, Nathan raised a glass and said, "Mum, I once sold your home, but somehow you gave me back mine, in your heart." Everyone clapped softly, and I felt tears stream down my face. "You didn't steal my home, Nathan," I said quietly. "You only helped me remember what it really meant." That night, I walked along the beach alone, the moon shining silver over the water. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Richard. We made it." The lesson of my life was simple. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It transforms it into peace. Sometimes, the family that breaks you is the same family that helps you heal. And as the waves touched my feet, I finally understood. Home isn't just a place, it's the people who learn to love you again after they've lost you. If my story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Somewhere out there, another mother might need to hear that forgiveness can still bring light, even after the darkest storm.